Greetings, YouTube. Today is Sunday, February 7th, 2021. We do not know what day this is going to hit the internet, or if it hits at all, because we are living in a political crappy world, as Bob Dylan said. Welcome, Michael.
Yeah, welcome, Brett. I just was being informed that from the 7th of June, 2021, there will be upload filters on YouTube, and we have been labeled in the meantime during this week as so-called conspirators or what else, because we are dealing with theories. And yeah, okay, so then we are in communion or in a community with other conspirational theories, like the So we are teaming up with other people who have theories, for example, about relativity or about evolution. Yeah, these are all theories which are being set or being handled as as truth, which they aren't. Okay, so this is the second version or the second session of James Dean. Oh, this old actor, who cares, you might think. Well, I think it's all a part of propaganda, and you're in it. And we cannot help, but we have to deal with that we are being influenced and manipulated 24/7 by the so-called Satanic Media agenda. Last time, we have excessively stated the Bible verses according to, for example, Daniel 3 with the golden statue of Nebuchadnezzar, or Exodus 20 and the following chapters where it goes about idols and images. Yeah, and this was the last page or the last image of the last session, James Dean's Weird Death Cult. Thousands of teenagers, this is a quote, have made a religion of his memory. A religion? Oh, so they're worshipping him. Him means James Dean. Died at the age of 24. Just 24. Not merely half the age that Brett and me have at the moment. So they have made a religion. Religion means they are worshipping their idol. I'm making a bit more bigger. Yeah, a religion. So this is their religion. Religion of any star, of any whatsoever Hollywood meme or group or inventor or painter. He's got his star, his pentagram, James Dean, with his face at the statue of Griffith Park Observatory. Why is that? Because in my humble opinion, I think one of his films, they pictured this very Griffith Park Observatory. So this is so-called holy ground where James Dean has been almost 70 years ago. Oh, well, this is James Dean. I'm not having anything against or for Mr. James Dean because I don't know him. But that sets me apart from people who are James Dean's fans, who also didn't know him, but they are fans. They love everything he did. And that sets us apart, because I think that there is no man walking on the earth which has no sin and which could be an idol. But many fans of Elvis Presley or Marilyn Monroe or Jimi Hendrix or whomsoever think that their star is without any fail and they want to be like him. Okay, so he's been worshipped here big time. Very big time. And this is just his face. It's a recognizable face. Maybe it's a pretty face, but it's a face. Yeah, James Dean. And in the background, what do you see? I'd say Hollywood. Okay, let's move on. What did I tell you? So I don't think that she's hugging the stone. I think she will express with that picture that she's very much in love with his idol, or with her idol, sorry to say. He's in love, she's in love, Everybody is in love with James Dean. But they are in love with a dead man. They are in love with an idol. They are in love with an image or idols. This is an image which has been created, in my humble opinion, by the satanic media industry. An image where you think that, oh, he was so smart, he was so cute, he was so lonely, whatever. And this is just to idolize someone, to hug an image or to hug a stone. I don't have anything against this woman. I feel sorry for her because that maybe there is somebody around in her neighborhood, even in her neighborhood, which would take care of her. They would be a great couple. But on that picture here, she's hugging a stone and worshipping a dead man, whom she thinks she knows. I find that very, very dangerous to idolize somebody. But let's move on. You see, there are many idols in this world. I don't go for the right one of Walt Disney. But apart from that, you see here supposedly James Dean, and then Marilyn Monroe, Some Like It Hot, and then Elvis Presley, Elvis the Pelvis. And these are just figures that the industry is setting up to deceive us, so that we think that, oh yeah, this man or this woman, this is so great, we have to admire them, they are so outstanding, they have talent, and yeah, it's worth that you spend the big time on these fan films and merchandise and this kind of stuff. And personally, I have nothing against these people who are fans, but you see that you have to realize that many people actually spend a whole lot of time for collecting things, getting in touch with other fans. And I don't think that this is a proper way of dealing with the subject, that somebody has his faults and his downfalls also. Yeah. You see, what all these three guys have in common, or girls, and in common, is they didn't last, their fame outlasted them, and death didn't change anything. Elvis Presley, I think he got, how old did he, well, I think 42 or something like that, so in his 40s. Marilyn Monroe was also not very old, and James Dean died at the age of 24. So what they all have in common, that they didn't have an extended life. And they weren't all very happy. Elvis Presley's wife, Priscilla Presley, they divorced quite soon after the birth of his daughter, or their daughter. Yeah. You see, name anybody in the industry who has been set up as an idol. Oh, Michael Jackson, he got, I think, 50 years old or something like that. But would you consider these people be happy? With all their money, with all their fame, with all their fortune, with all their fans? Really? Well, let's look behind the curtain, please. Of course, everybody needs to have his pentagram, his fallen star. This is the one of James Dean. And this is not the only one. This is the James Dean Memorial Junction. Yeah, you see that everybody needs to have a place where they can worship or remember their idol. There are several facilities around the world. We will go into that quite soon. Yeah, you see, if you are really, really prominent, you get your own street sign. This is the James Dean Memorial Junction. This is the place where he died. You see that if you can make it big in this world, people will talk about you even when you're dead. And this is being an idol, actually. Yeah, that people think, oh yeah, that was such a great, outstanding person, that he even a street has been named for his or her, or a building has been named for his and her, or a crossing has been named, or a junction for example, James Dean. We will go into that very extensively later on, much, much later. Yeah, you see, these are all places of worship, and where people then lay down their flowers, like in a gravestone. This is supposedly the actual location where he died. And yeah, people are going into like a kind of pilgrimage, something like that. They drive to this location and they think about it, and maybe they pray, and they put some items of worship there, license plates and flowers, posters, stickers, flags, something like that. And this is even 60 plus years after the accident occurred. Also, people make big time money with that, because this is, for example, the gas station where James Dean was last being seen. This is Blackwell Corners, but you see that this is a Texaco station, and you see in the foreground here the face of James Dean, so everybody who's driving down the lane, knows exactly, oh yeah, James Dean has something to do with that. And in the background here you see, yeah, a very big statue of James Dean. This one. Yeah, so James Dean tells you, here is the entrance. You have to go, you have to buy here. And let me tell you, inside the store, it doesn't look very much different, because there's also a corner of memory or something like that. I have not inserted it here because my computer failed last night, but nevertheless, you see, there are many posters, gadgets, statues, stickers, etc., of James Dean. In my humble opinion, he's one of the most icons of the 20th century. When I was beginning to collect posters in the 80s, 1980s, this is, then I cannot remember of any poster store where I didn't come across of a poster of Marilyn Monroe, Elvis Presley, or James Dean. Not in that kind of order, but just to make sure that, oh, these are the icons. Okay, let's move on. The James Dean cult hits Australia. Sydney. The teenage fad of worshipping dead, places of worship is a church, worshipping dead movie star James Dean, which has been sweeping America and Britain, has spread to Australia. The James Dean Revival Club has been formed here to keep alive the memory of the teenager's idol. A few mourn him, but others, in their dedication, ever that the star is not dead but merely hiding somewhere, so no one will see the scars he received in the car crash in which he was killed. This is wishful thinking. There is an official document stating that he has died in the car accident, or he has died in the hospital. Better said, he has died in the hospital short time later. Okay. The Des Moines Register, Iowa, December 31st, so New Year's Eve, 1956, about 50 months after his death, writes, many fans know Dean is still alive. Is James Dean or Jimmy Dean really dead? The facts say yes, but the Dean cult says no. In the years since he was killed in an auto crash, the auto studio has received more than 50,000 letters, all addressed to Dean as if he were alive. Next newspaper, La Grande Observer, Oregon, April the 6th, 1957. Everybody has heard the rumors that James Dean isn't really dead. Heard is a switch on that, while Giant, so this last movie, together with Rod Hudson and Elizabeth Taylor, I think, was here. Someone said he was dead before the movie was finished and the guy in the dark glasses was someone else. Next, coming up, Tennessee, Nashville, April 28, 1957. James Dean cult sweeps into Paris, means France. The James Dean cult has hit Paris. In the rear of small cafe groups of teenagers can be found poring over mementos of the young film star. 1,500 or more Paris teenagers count themselves charter members of such clubs at the dedicated Deans, the Dean's Teens, or the Lest We Forget Club and the James Dean Memorial Club. 1,500 or more. That's a considerable amount of fans. The Sydney Morning Herald said, 37 months after his death, tens of thousands of fans still refuse to believe he is in his grave. His studio, Warner Brothers, still receive about 3,000 letters a month. So giving putting that into context, Brett, in the 1950s, where information was not that openly available on the internet, like today, you see that newspapers were one prime example of spreading so-called, news. So you see that even if we combine everything which we have read here, we have to state that this cult was very much alive in the 50s after his death. So after his death, he was more prominent than he ever was while being alive. This is also a kind of necromancy, sort of. Yeah, newspapers even receive letters from fans. Yeah, somebody says, I have heard many stories that James is still alive. He's in hiding because he banged his face up real bad. Is it true? Could you please put up a picture of him in the paper for me? Karen from Akron. And the publisher or the journalist replied, James Dean is dead. So is Ruler Valentino. So is Judge Crater. And so be all those foolish stories. He was being described as the turbulent god, G-O-D, to millions. James Dean stars in 2 of his very greatest dramas. Yeah, so that every movie, every small pig, every short movie he appeared, it was being promoted as, oh, this is another James Dean movie. So they made him like a god. Yeah, you shall be as God, said the snake to Eve. And these stars are being handed or being seen as gods because they appear extremely big on the big screen. This is a big screen in the cinema. People appear to be much more bigger than in real life. In real life, he was a short bloke. He was not a very tall actor. But apart from that, you see, he's been promoted in the 1950s, 60s, and on as a god, as a star, as a cult, as a religion, with followers. And these followers were mainly called the Deaners. These are the fans of the legendary actor James Dean. So he was very much more famous dead than alive. And that kept me into thinking that about 23 years later, or 22 years later, when in 1977 Elvis Presley died, also these rumors were, oh no, he didn't die, he's hiding somewhere. The same was going around with Bruce Lee, so that everybody, when a big star is dying, people think, oh no, he's not really dead. No, they don't want to believe that because they are worshipping somebody. And this is the Deaners, the fans of the legendary actor. Yeah, he just went to become 24. The legendary actor. And he wasn't that nice in his movies also. I know, he just played the role. But he was violent, he was shouting, he was threatening people with a knife, he was driving cars at very high speed. Things like that. What you are doing when you are in between a child and in between an adult. So when you are growing up, when you are a teenager. Yeah? These are just scenes from a movie. In an observatory. Okay? And I'm not dissing anybody or something like that. Don't get me wrong. But you see that he was not the one who had these he was in his films, he was not an idol. If you see him as those, okay, yes, he seemed to be very fragile and very sensitive, very sensible. Yeah, but he also was beating up his so-called father. He handled or he fighted with a knife. So keep that in context when we are speaking about James Dean being an idol. Okay? But nevertheless, in those days, you have to be very careful because what you see is not what you get. Or what you see is what you should get. Because people try to say that now, oh, no. He was a very strange guy. He was, for example, a homosexual. The problem is that we are living in a day and age where everybody and everything can be manipulated. This is Elvis Presley together with James Dean, okay? We know the two characters. But this is actually the original picture in that movie. So nowadays, it has been everybody can be faked. Every movie and every picture, everything can be faked. We have to be very careful if we simply rely on pictures. It is the best if we rely on pictures which were taken in that time, and to sort out which is true and which is not true. Yeah, so this is photoshopped. And this is James Dean together with Marlon Brando, the wild one. Huh? And both of them, yes, they are pictures starring them or picturing them together, but not in that scene. Yeah, because you see, you are being fooled. It is very important to know that we have been fooled and that we are being constantly being fooled. So everybody which does the television set or the cinema or the newspapers putting out could be manipulated. Think of the Zapruder film from JFK, which has been manipulated, most likely. Because many people claim that some things are being missing or being blacked out, and this was the analog age. Think of the possibilities today with digital coding, encoding, manipulation, Photoshop, etc. So we have to be very careful, very careful. And we have to have a huge amount of original claims so that we can sort out what is the truth. Because people intend to believe the things they are seeing. So if that is the only picture you are seeing, you intend to believe, oh yeah, of course, he was a homosexual, he was very much in love with Marlon Brando, and the other way around. But you see that if you know you have been manipulated, then you have to ask, why are there people out there who are manipulating pictures, images, movies, sequences, or even interviews? Because you see that the name James Dean is a household name. It's just like a trademark. Then people think, oh, James Dean, oh yeah, got to read it. That's interesting. Oh yeah, my mom was a very big fan, or my grandfather, or something like that. So James Dean is a household name of the Satanic Media Industry. So going on to James Dean, you see that it comes now not in the right chronological order. I admit that it would take weeks to get that right, because this is another 700 pages script. But to make a long story short, the long story will come a little bit later. James Dean was born in Indiana. He lived in Santa Monica, California until his mother died, at which point his father sent him to live with relatives in Fairmount, Indiana. Dean died in a car accident just outside of Bakersfield in 1955. So that's it. So he lived life from 1930, 31, somewhere. He had the age of 24 when he died, until 1955. So while in Fairmount, Dean was raised in a Quaker household. Most accounts of his official religion are that he was a Quaker, and his funeral was held as a Quaker church house in Fairmount. But there was a strong push by some Christians to paint Dean as an atheist or maybe an occultist, and quoting him as saying as like, quote, "No matter what they say, there isn't any heaven. There is no hell either." Second quote, "I believe in freedom, not God." But these quotes are unattributed and rare even in the near-infinitive internet universe. Plus, books have been written debunking such rumors, so I'm skeptical of their validity. However, one quote attributed to Dean does hint at the possibility that Dean was unsure about the existence of an afterlife. He said, quote, "If a man can bridge the gap between life and death, if he can live on after he's dead, then maybe he was a great man," unquote. To me, this shows that Dean believed in a sort of pagan immortality. But as far as the Satanist, occultist, atheist rumors, I remain...
Comment. If I was 24, if you were 24, Michael, it would be so easy to make a harebrained comment like this.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Sure.
what happened to good old repentance? You know,
Sure.
people can repent when they make such mistakes and make such huge foolish statements like that. And look, he didn't live to repent, but that doesn't mean we should judge him. That's
No,
God's job.
no. But what I would like to say is that everything has its backside. You see, you won't get
Oh
any
yeah.
valuable information. What about James Dean? We have to take the Bible
Mm-hmm.
into questioning what the purpose was of James Dean's life,
Mm-hmm.
because
Right. Right.
we have to judge them by the fruits, and that's what I want to do from now on. Yeah, I
Well, you
don't
know, he
like.
was manipulated too. So
Sure.
by the industry, they have to make great men of this earth, Michael, and that's what they do. And yeah, he got out of control in a car and wrecked his car and killed both him and his. Did he kill his
No, no, no,
passenger
no, no,
too?
no,
No,
no, no, no,
he
no.
survived.
Yes.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting because you see that the last film he was starring in is called Giants.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, I know very, very little about James Dean. Almost nothing at all, actually. I just never even, there's so many different of these icons, if you will, big actors and actresses that, I hardly don't know anything about Marilyn Monroe and all these other people either. I mean, I just recently discovered that Marilyn Monroe had an affair with John F. Kennedy. And I'm just not old enough to know these things.
Yeah, we are not.
Or to care, really.
Yeah, we are not here to go into every affair, but we are
No.
going to here to find out what the role of James Dean would be in the Satanic Media agenda. And I
That's
got
correct.
and I got the clue that it is to build up an idol. But
Yes,
how
absolutely.
it's been done and
Like
why it's been done.
The old television show they have now called American Idol.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
right.
why and how? I think that's the most interesting things. What really? Where can you see what has been manipulated? You can see where is information which has been suppressed, for example. So if you go with the flow, you think that these great images, these lovely girls, this good-looking fellow, you won't get to the truth. So we have to look behind. The first hint is that he was considered to be a great American rebel. So who's the rebel? Who is in rebellion to what? You see, the rebel comes in the Bible in as the meaning of the name of Nimrod, which was the great hunter, the hunter for souls. So if he was being portrayed, or we are portraying rebellious characters, so he is in rebellion against God or rebellion against the government, whatever. But he is in rebellion, so he must be against the commandments. And in the Bible it said that Nimrod was the first hunter and was a mighty man of the earth. And James Dean, he succeeded, or the agenda behind James Dean succeeded to move on until this very day. Because everybody knows who James Dean is, except from 8-year-old children maybe, but usually people know who James Dean is. Despite the fact he just starred in 3 big movies, despite the fact he just was 24 years old. So, let's go on. He was a rebel. Okay. Let's say he was part of the industry. What is one of the most interesting facts is that every time you look at a James Dean picture, something pops up like this. Yeah, this is an advertisement for the cigarette manufacturer called Marlboro. You got a lot to like. Filter flavor, etc. The flavor is Marlboro. Yeah, because almost any time that you come across James Dean, you find him with a cigarette. I think he was very much into cigarettes, not only cigarettes alone, but I think he was dependent on cigarettes, on nicotine, without filter, usually.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
this is the first thing which comes around, that he was an icon where people then have made him as an icon, and that the advertisement industry was taking advantage of his face and his prominence, his status, etc. Now this is Marlboro. Yeah, and even if smoking can kill you, that does not make anything more or less, because you see that James Dean smoking. Yeah, there are hundreds or more pictures where he's smoking. And this is not a smoking gun. It's just really that he was into smoking. Okay. You see, this is public relations, means propaganda. So everybody which has been displayed on that magical screen where Anton Channel LaVey, the founder of the Church of Satan, said this is the TV set is the Satanic Media altar, or the family altar. Yeah, this is propaganda. Yeah, these advertisements and the using of an image of an idol as propaganda has been named by Gustave Le Bon, psychology of the masses. You see, this is the German Chancellor Adolf Hitler here. Yes, all propaganda. Yeah, somebody is in front and is raised, and it tells the things to do for the ordinary people, and that's the same thing which is entertainment. It means because it means to enter, entertain you mentally, and this is what this is what entertainment and television does. Yeah. And you see that it's been used by dictators, and it's been used by psychology. And all these people, for example, by Sigmund Freud, it's mass psychology and the ego analysis, the future of an illusion. This is all part of agenda. This is all part of a psychological operation called psyops. Yeah? For example, from Edward Bernays, propaganda. Yeah? Propaganda, Edward Bernays, you know, that is the same as I want you for US Army. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Edward Bernays, for example, he was the founder of the public relations, because public relations sounds much more better than propaganda, but usually it has been to do with propaganda. And he was a nephew of Sigmund Freud, so that means that propaganda and psychology go hand in hand. Or would you trust that guy, Sigmund Freud? He was also a cocaine user and had some very big issues. Yeah, the more perfect a person is on the outside, the more demons they have on the inside. This is Sigmund Freud. Demons do not exist any more than gods do, being only the product of the psychic activity of man. Yeah, this is all part of the agenda of Sigmund Freud. And also Oedipus conflict, so that means that every boy loves to have sex with the opposite sex of his parents. You see that these guys are loonies. Yeah, because Oedipus is also part of the Greek mythology. Yeah, and in his book, and for Sigmund Freud, Moses and Monotheism on page 202, he says, we understand, this is a quotation, quote, we understand that the primitive man needs a God as creator of the world. Yeah? So that means that if you are an educated man, you do not need a God, because you become yourself a God, of course. This is Luciferianism. But I can back it up that this quote is from Sigmund Freud, because I have read that book in that context. So that is really a quote of Sigmund Freud, who has made a book, who has created a book of the mass psychology. And he says, the primitive man needs a God as creator of the world. So the primitive man only believes in creation, but the educated man believes in what? Evolution? And there I inserted Romans 1:22. Yeah, professing to be wise, they became fools.
Yes, they did.
Yeah. And then Mr. Bernays, who was the nephew of Sigmund Freud, he married his girlfriend Doris Fleischmann, and they have been connected to the Lucy Stone League, an American Rights of Women organization. Lucy, huh? Interesting. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Let's look it up. Lucy Stone. Ah, it's her name. Okay.
Oh, you know what, Michael? I just have to read this because it just makes so much more sense when you just read the whole thing. Romans 1:21 through what? 24. Because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God. Neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools and changed the glory of an uncorruptible God into an image made like to corruptible man, and to birds, and to four-footed beasts, and creeping things. Wherefore God also gave them up to uncleanness through the lusts of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves. Yeah, that is what we call divine recompense right there.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, Michael. Good point.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I don't want to go into that matter very deep, because you see that all this psychology goes into research of how to manipulate people. Yeah. So because Mr. Bernays, he was a pioneer of psychology and social science and publicity, and his results and his discoveries in the public relations, helped the psychoanalysis of Sigmund Freud to make popular in the United States of America. Yeah? So birds of a feather flock together.
They sure do. Oh, do they ever.
Yeah, and his most profound and most known book is called Propaganda, 1928. And in the beginning of the first chapter is called Organizing Chaos. Where do we know that from? Odo Apkao.
Correct. That's the motto of the High Freemasons, yeah? 33rd degree.
Yeah.
The book that trying to remember his name now, Albert Pike put together too, has that on the cover. It's Morals and Dogmas, the title.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it was that if you owned a copy of that book back in the day, you were killed if you weren't given that book by the Masonic fraternity for the purpose of learning your degrees. If you own that book, you were a dead man.
Mm-hmm.
If you were found in possession of it, that is.
And you see here the conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. This is 1928. 1928. The ruling power of our country are those who are manipulating with unseen mechanism of society. Yeah, this is actually quite right. You see, these are public relations methods, and public relation is the newer word coming from propaganda, because they found that propaganda doesn't sound that right, doesn't sound that politically correct. So today it's not been named propaganda, but public relations, which is actually the same. You try to create an image, yeah. What then goes back to manipulate people, especially if you use a prominent one. And prominence comes from people who are standing out, yeah, standing out among the multitude. So somebody who is, an elder, or somebody is an idol, something like that. Yeah? So this is war propaganda also. For example, from Woodrow Wilson. from We Must Accept the War, quote, "The world must be made safe for democracy. Its peace must be planted upon the trusted foundations of political liberty." Yeah, we must accept war. We, who's we? Yes, we can. Yeah.
We the people is what he means.
Yeah. And Bernays worked for the Bureau of Latin American Affairs. Latin? Huh? Interesting. Latin. And he says his duty or his profession is psychologically making war. Huh? So psychologische Kriegsführung means psychologically making war. Also against the own public, of course. Yeah. So make the world safe for democracy. Huh? Special weapons and tactics, military autocracy, every liberty bond you buy helps win the war. Buy more liberty bonds. Okay? Yeah, and so he was renaming propaganda into public relations. And there are public relations agencies like, for example, Hill and Knowlton. Yeah, 1990, from a young girl from Kuwait named Najira, who said before the US Congress that she had witnesses that there were Iraqi soldiers invading a Kuwait city in the Al Adnan hospital and throwing out babies and killing babies. Yeah, this is Naria. This is the public relation company behind her, and nobody asked about the origin of her name or what. No. You see that hundreds of people, educated people, did not question the quotation of a young 15-year-old whatsoever girl. Yeah, but then United States went into war. Yeah? President Bush named it several times. It was a false testimony given before the United States Congressional Human Rights Caucus on October 10, 1990 by a young 15-year-old young girl who provided only her first name. Can you imagine a 15-year-old girl providing only her first name, and hundreds of congressional people fell for that? Can you really believe it? Later on, they found out 2 years later, they needed 2 years to find out that she was the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador to the United States. Really? Yeah. But your House of Representatives, they were voting with 250 votes pro and 183 votes contra for war, pro-war. This is an example for manipulation and disinformation. Yeah? This is disinformation. We are being told lies and lies and lies and lies and lies and lies and lies. And they are united in the European Union. There are laws, Article 13 of the media law. It's been said about the copyright reform, etc. There are so many laws that also the internet will be restricted and getting limitations more and more and more and more and more. Yeah, especially in from June on this year. So if you don't find us anymore, it has nothing to do with us. It has to do with the changing of laws. Yeah, I will skip that here. There's far too much for now, this kind of stuff. Okay, I can mention that. Okay, I can mention that. For example, for the Event 201 and for the suppression of fake news, public relations company also was hired. It's called the Edelman Agency from 1952, founded in New York, United States. Yeah? They were also at the World Economic Forum, 2011. You make your mind up what that means, that if a public relation company is being officially being a member of a group who tries to suppress so-called fake news. Okay? Don't go into that now, because otherwise you will never go into James Dean. Huh? And
Right,
Hillary Norton, the same propaganda, propaganda, the same public relations, which is actually the same as propaganda, the same propaganda agency or public relations agency, Hillary Norton, who lied about Naria and the Iraqi soldiers in Kuwait. They have now on their website strategy COVID-19 sharing communications insights. Okay. In a crisis, public relations is the most critical need. Okay, and now comes the translation. In a crisis, propaganda is the most critical need. Because actually propaganda and public relations is the same. It's absolutely the same. Yeah. And I think it's not a coincidence that these computer things are called viruses or antivirus. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also the name of Microsoft software called Windows actually makes me a little bit uncomfortable, because you see that Jesus Christ said in John 10:1 a little bit different about, or a little bit negative about Windows when information comes down through a window. What does that mean? You see, this is the verse in context. Yeah. Would you like to read that, Brad?
Sure. Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that entereth not by the door into the sheepfold, but climbeth up some other way, the same is a thief and a robber. But he that entereth in by the door is the shepherd of the sheep.
Yeah, what does that mean? If is an information here in that picture is entering through a window. Okay, you make your mind up, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You see, Windows. We had Windows by The Exorcist, no? Where the spirit was coming out of the window. You remember?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so their software is called Windows, not doors. Windows. And also, I have to disappoint you if you think, you're very safe in the internet. This is the Tor project with the onion, okay? Resist the surveillance pandemic. But the problem is here, printed very small, the Tor project is a United States 501c3 non-profit organization.
Yeah.
So they are obliged to the government also.
Of course.
Yeah. So if anybody types in any information about the Tor browser, yeah, then what's the difference? Yeah. And DuckDuckGo is a search engine which does not provide or does not use any personal informations, they say. But the problem is that DuckDuckGo has signed the USA Patriot Act. As all companies in the United States are being obliged to the United States of America Patriot Act. And therefore they are obliged that governments like the FBI, the NSA, and CIA, after official allowance through the FSIA secret council or secret judge, they have to open their or spread out their information they have collected. Yeah? So there is no privacy anymore. Yeah. So there was also a scandal in 2020 when the privacy browser of DuckDuckGo sent all the visited websites or host names to another servers. So it's you can forget it. You can forget it. Yeah? And going back to James Dean, cigarettes was one of the major things that Edward Bernays, the father of so-called propaganda, was into. Yeah. So Lucky Strike, for example. Yeah, this is Edward Bernays' propaganda. The American Tobacco Company, they ask him to increase the amount of Lucky Strike cigarette sales. Okay, and he says, well, then we have to use the cigarette as a phallic symbol. Yeah, you see like obelisk coming out of the mouth as a phallic symbol. And he says, oh yeah, let's point out to Sigmund Freud's phallus things as a motivation of women to go into cigarettes, because at that time the openly smoking of women was taboo. Yeah, so the strategy was about to use cigarettes as a symbol of female emancipation and the resistance of women against smoking, to downplay the resistance of women against smoking. So, for example, here, this is an advertisement telling you more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. That does not mean that smoking is healthy. It just tells you that more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. Okay, what's the big deal now? You see that maybe more hunters smoke Camels than any other cigarette. But okay, then if it is a doctor, then people say, oh yeah, he knows what he's a semi-god. He knows what he's doing. Pharmakeia. Huh? But some years later, in the 1960s, he worked for the anti-smoking campaign. You see that for the love of money is the root of all evil. Mm. So what is fake and what is fact? Yeah. For example, I got here a website in that context, which I was warned about yesterday. Oh no, this is a website where the security ID is not correct. Please do not open that site. And I said, okay, well, I opened that site. It's about 1-to-1 vitamins, A Tale of Two Doctors from Dr. Ralph Chinke. If he does exist, I don't know that. You see that everything can be fake. But nevertheless, it was very interesting because he has to do with vitamins. And I'm a very big fan of vitamins, but I'm not a fan on artificial vitamins, but on, for example, vegetables and something like that, so that you have good food and not...
Correct. Vitamin-rich food, Michael.
Yeah, yes. Not to supply any artificial things. No? Mm-hmm. So, but in that regard, he says about Humphrey Bogart, Tough with a Gun. Yeah, because Humphrey Bogart also was very famous for Casablanca and all of these movies, but also was very prominent to be a heavy smoker. Yeah, was a heavy smoker. Yeah. Every time you look upon an old movie with Humphrey Bogart, he's smoking. And he made an interesting article about James Dean. Says health lessons of a friend-side life. Yeah, James Dean. Smoking. Even as a tattoo, people remember James Dean smoking. He said, James Dean, quote, reality doesn't have any preconceived ideas. You've got to learn how to smoke the cigarette, not act smoking the cigarette. You need to drink the drink, not act drinking the drink. You've got to do things and not show them. So he means, whatever I do, I have to have experience first, right? And this doctor says, I recently read James Dean, Little Boy Lost by his close friend, Hollywood columnist Joe Hyams. My interest in James Dean stemmed not so much from his life, but his afterlife. He really had only 1 year in the spotlight, the last year of his life, 1955. That was the year he completed his 3 movies, East of Eden, Rebel Without a Cause, and Giant. Biblical context. Biblical context. Biblical context. Right, Brad?
Correct.
Yes, it has been said that his enduring afterlife has been exceeded by only 2 other stars, Elvis Presley and Marilyn Monroe. James Dean has become a cult hero, the undying personification of rebellious youth. At first, he mainly did commercials, starting with Pepsi commercial.
Pepsi-Cola hits the spot, a big bottle and it's got bounce, 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 bounce. Go get Pepsi for the Pepsi bounce.
Now go get Pepsi for the Pepsi bounce. more bounce to the ounce, more bounce to the ounce. Go get Pepsi for that Pepsi bounce.
Then why take less when Pepsi's best? More bounce to the ounce with Pepsi.
Ooh, my Pepsi.
Popularity? That's what Pepsi's got most of. Pepsi gives more fun, more bounce to the ounce, and more for your money, too. Wherever the crowd gathers, you're sure to find Pepsi. So why take less when Pepsi's best? Buy Pepsi by the carton.
And bit parts on television. He's got big parts of movies, including Dean Martin, Jerry Lewis comedy, and John Wayne movies, etc., etc. His big break came when Elia Kazan, the head of Actors Studio, was chosen in 1954 to direct the movie East of Eden, based on the novel of John Steinbeck. Dean was indeed brilliant in it. You can't watch that movie without reacting to his emotions of the troubled relationship between Cal, so James Dean, and his father. Dean had with his own father a special relationship. Dean was shooting for the role then of Jim Stark in Rebel Without a Cause, his signature movie. For one, James Dean, remember, this has been an article from a doctor, right? James Dean was a heavy smoker. He smoked unfiltered Chesterfields, which are up there with unfiltered Camels as the strongest American cigarettes. Elia Kazan said that during the 9 hours flight from New York to Los Angeles in 1955 to begin work on East of Eden, James Dean chain smoked the entire 9 hours. Smoking does a number on your digestion. It chokes off circulation to the digestive tract. It dries up digestive secretions, including saliva, and it indurates the membranes where digestion takes place. I realize there are smokers who are overweight. However, James Dean was a classic ectomorph, meaning that he was, by nature, slender, slim-waisted, long-limbed, and generally delicate and fragile. Ectomorphs have short guts, meaning that they have less surface area from which to absorb food. When ectomorphs smoke, and heavily at that, they are bound to lose weight. For two, James Dean drank alcohol, which interferes with and retards digestion. I know that many people believe that drinking wine with a meal aids digestion, but that is a complete myth. It has the opposite effect. I believe that in today's medical world, James Dean would have been diagnosed with bipolar depression. He was subject to a very erratic behavior and severe mood swings, both before and after he became a star. He was never treated medically for his condition, but he did treat himself with alcohol. He often got drunk. He often drove drunk, and it scared people. And when he was under stress, which was often, he relied even more heavily on alcohol. Regarding other drugs, there are no reports of his ample usage of anything else. He probably smoked marijuana occasionally and may have done other drugs sporadically at parties, etc. But clearly, tobacco and alcohol were his drugs of choice. And really, it's amazing that he has never got started on medical drugs because he suffered with severe insomnia. That was during the same period that Marilyn Monroe was wrestling with her terrible insomnia and taking heavy-duty barbiturates for it. But when James Dean couldn't sleep, he just got up. And I can back that up from different biographies. And I don't mean to read or watch TV or listen to music. I mean that he got up and got dressed and went speeding off his motorcycle looking for all-night taverns, diners, and speakeasies. And that brings us up to our first health lesson from life. It is better to treat insomnia with drugs or just to live with it. And I think that clearly it's better to just live with it. James Dean did better than Marilyn Monroe in that respect. And the reason is that as you sleep, debt builds. Eventually, it pushes through the resistance and you crash and you do find sleep. I have mentioned that article because I'm not the only person who has an eye on the extreme smoking habit from Mr. James Dean. I know that in these former times, most of the celebrities smoke also on screen, and that now, since the 1970s, somewhere it is been seen as a rude behavior and that it could cause cancer and something like that. That's what I was mentioning here, that he was seen as a personification of rebellious youth, the American rebel, also being portrayed very often with a cigarette, so that he's been seen with a phallic symbol or has been seen with the symbol of being an adult, so that he is allowed to smoke. And yeah, he does that. And yeah, he is... Another thing he had in common with Marilyn Monroe was a penchant for Freudian psychoanalysis. Oh, didn't we mention Sigmund Freud before? being related to Edward Bernays, propaganda, psychoanalysis. And it sounds like it did him about as much good as it did her, which is to say not much. By the way, James Dean and Marilyn Monroe did meet at the Actor Studio in New York. Interesting, that fact. Yeah, and the other things I would like to go into another session. This doctor says, I think James Dean was a great actor, but perhaps because of his bipolar depression, he lived very self-destructively. It's amazing that Warner Brothers didn't try harder to protect their valuable asset from himself. They did try to limit and control his dangerous driving, but not his smoking or drinking. So I'd say that I would be very astonished that even if that accident would not have been occurred, that he would achieve a lifespan of 80 years, something like that. I would be very surprised, because he did extensively at least tobacco, and that's not a good thing. Everybody knows that.
Right.
So that was this doctor quotation which I found. Yeah. And you see that it's very hard to digest what's coming now and what has to do with something else, and all things are related. But all this propaganda and public influencing with prominent people like James Dean, it has something to do with for the love of money is the root of all evil. Because this Mr. Bernays, the father of propaganda, he helped the Aluminium Company of America, named Alcoa, and other companies to convince the American publicity that the fluoride to drinking water will do no harm and is positive for your health. And this has been achieved through a medical campaign of the Society of the Dentists. Okay?
Correct.
So it had nothing to do actually with the truth. Yeah, and also the Jewish anti-Jewish propaganda in the Third Reich was been taken out of a book of Mr. Bernays, and he was crystallizing. The book is called Crystallizing Public Opinion, and this he found out later that Mr. Goebbels, the propaganda minister of the German Reich, had in his bibliothèque, and he was very much offended by that. And he said that obviously the attack on the Jews of Germany was no emotional outburst of the Nazis, but a deliberate planned campaign, quote unquote. Huh? This is the very book where this quote is coming from. The Biography of an Idea, Memories of Public Relations Counsel Edward L. Bernays. This is the very book. And in this book, he also says that a man called Carl von Wiegand has visited the government of the Third Reich, and Hitler has recently come to power in Germany. And Carl von Wiegand, the foreign correspondent of the Hearst newspapers, in an old hand at interpreting Europe and just returned from Germany, was telling about Goebbels, the propaganda minister, and his propaganda plans. And he was a Jesuit priest, Mr. Goebbels, to consolidate Nazi power. Goebbels has shown Wiegand his propaganda library, the best Wiegand had ever seen. Goebbels said Wiegand was using my book, Crystallizing Public Opinion by Edward Bernays, as a basis for his destructive campaign against the Jews of Germany. This shocked me, but I knew any human activity can be used for social purposes or misused for antisocial ones. Obviously, the attack on the Jews of Germany was no emotional outburst of the Nazis, but a deliberate, planned campaign. Unquote. You know the Alfred E. Smith Memorial Foundation dinner?
Yes, held in the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, yes.
From the Roman Catholic Church.
Yep.
Being represented by the Archbishop of New York. Right?
Very familiar with this.
Very familiar with it. So in that book from Edward Bernays, it's been called L. Smith. I had always been impressed with the sincerity, straightforwardness, and frankness of L. Smith. Some matter brought me into his office, a huge director's room, all leather and wood paneling, to confer with him alone in the great new Empire State Building, of which he was president. His personality made for free and easy interchange without the usual preparatory amenities. Governor, I said, it must give you great satisfaction to be president of the Empire State Building Corporation. You have been governor of the greatest state in the Union, the Empire State. Now you are president of the corporation owning the largest structure in the world. He answered me disdainfully, quote, Mr. Bernays, I am janitor of the Empire State. And this is a quotation from a Swiss newspaper called NZZ, NZZ.ch, Society, the Secret Deceiver. Yeah? Arrogant, egocentric, and elite thinking Edward Bernays, the Pope of Propaganda, died at the age of 102 years in his house in Cambridge. A master of manipulation. How Edward Bernays, with the clever PR propaganda work, changed our culture. Yeah. So
yeah, there's a really good video everyone can watch about Edward Bernays. It goes into great detail about it, called the what was it called again? It's The Century of the Self, and the episode is Happiness Machines. It's 1 hour of 4 hours. There's 4 hours worth of videos. I tried to upload that on YouTube in like 2011 or 2013 or somewhere in there, and it was rejected. They would not allow that upload on my channel at that time, and then just after that, people were able to upload it, so I never uploaded it to my channel. But that was a long time ago. Yeah. So again, that's Happiness Machines, and the episode is it's The Century of the Self, and the episode is Happiness Machines.
Edward Bernays said, we are being ruled by persons which names we have never been heard. Like puppet players like him. That from the Swiss article, okay? We are being ruled by people whose names we never heard, like puppet players as. So to sum it up, this was the second session of James Dean. It was a little bit confusing sometimes maybe, but you see that I think that James Dean has been greatly misused by the media to be a tool of attention, that people think, oh, this was a great smart guy, and yeah, he did smoke a lot, but you see that also doctors do smoke a lot, and if they do, they take Camel. And I think that we will go far into this media agenda with James Dean, not insulting anybody or anyone, but it's just to look a little bit more behind the curtain, because if anybody is about it's about money, all about money, it's the love of money, it's the root of all evil, then they made big money, big time with James Dean, especially after his death. So everything is about James Dean, is about a cult, to erect a cult, almost religious cult, as some newspapers were telling us, after his death, actually. He was not that famous during his life, but after his death, he rose like a superstar in the sky. And so I find it very interesting to go into the third session, where I think that somebody or someone out there, hope, will see the point that nothing ever will be done by accident in the media. So everybody is according a plan, and the agenda is to distract people, to entertain people, to distract people from the Bible and from the truth, actually. So the time we are spending in explaining the phenomena of James Dean, or the industry and the agenda behind it, is the one thing, but the other thing is just to spend hours and hours in front of the television set or in front of the computer monitor, and then to look at movies of James Dean, because they won't tell us anything as a helping instruction or operating manual for our life. The operation manual for our life is the Bible. And therefore, on that bombshell, I would like to hand it over to my beloved brother Brad. Thank you very much for your time, and hope to see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Michael. And that is exactly the purpose of the sessions that we do, Michael and I together. We collaborate on the basis that we're wrestling with our flesh. We are wrestling with the principalities, the powers, the spiritual wickedness in high places. And little did we know in our youth what we were headed to in later life, that we would discover that there is a vast amount of history and prophecy that work together to explain exactly the conditions where our Savior, our Messiah, has placed us, and that he has put his trust in us in order to bring his gospel to his people in this life. So really thankful for Michael's time and energy putting together this session again today, and I'm hoping that we can continue near in the future. But as always, we must recognize that God has a timeline, and that timeline could be it can be interpreted in many different ways, and obviously there's been a lot of false interpretation. So we're just here to try to help others to see that there is a light at the end of this life, this tunnel, that we are in darkness, and that there are many portions of the Bible that explain that darkness and explain that condemnation that we have been placed under. But we can allow the Lord into that door that we talked about earlier, not a window, but a door. And that door, once it's open, he says, knock and I will, how does that scripture go? Let me look that up. I think it's in Revelation where how did that go, Michael?
Everybody who knocks will be.
Let me quick search it out.
It's in Matthew.
Yes, I think you're right.
Yeah.
Ask and it shall be given unto you. Seek and ye shall find. Knock and it shall be opened unto you. Matthew 7:7.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For everyone that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be opened. Or what man is there of you, of whom his son ask bread, will he give him a stone? Or if he ask for a fish, will he give him a serpent? This is a very interesting portion of Matthew right here. This is Matthew 7:10. Or if he ask a fish, someone's hungry and they ask kindly, or maybe they demand in a harsh way. Are we supposed to give him a serpent? Are we supposed to deceive him? No. That's not love. And that's, was really interesting. The two commandments that Jesus gave us to fulfill his commission that we are entrusted with on this earth is to love one another as you love yourself. And you do not give someone evil for evil. That is the wrong way to go. You are to rebuke those that are in error. That is biblical, because we're not doing this for money. We're not doing this for wealth. We're doing this for love. We're doing this because we have a passion, Michael and I, to bring others out of this confusion that we were in also. And not that we might reap anything out of it. We don't expect to. We do it simply because this is what we are asked to do through the scriptures. Right, Michael? So, again, really grateful for the time that Michael spent in going through the historical lessons of the Satanic Media Agenda and of course all of the occult principles attached to it, that we might be able to reprove those that are in error and to bring them back to the only truth and the only light there is in this world, and that is Jesus Christ, our Messiah, who came 2,000 years ago to fulfill the 70th week of Daniel and to continue the gospel in the Spirit on this earth. We'll catch you next time. God bless, and bye-bye.